A few weeks ago, there was an article in both the Lehigh Valley Express Times, LehighValleyLive.com, and then also in the Morning Call and mcall.com about the revival of 6 classifications. And we had heard this years ago. I remember on the show we talked about it around 2009. And I remember it started to gather some momentum and people were talking about it. It was going to happen. And then over the summer it kind of died quickly. And then you hear rumors, but it kind of came to light again in December of 2009. So maybe we could go first through the history of this and talk about how it's evolved up until from 2009 all the way up until December of 2014 and now as we enter the spring months here in 2015. So Jason and Joe will ask you for the history first.
Sure. I mean, Chris, this is now my 15th year as athletic director, and I think this has cycled through 3 times since then, and previous. I think Joel vouched when he was an AD, it cycled through then. I think what you see, the proposal is pure and simple. You're playing the state championship the week before Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay. It's late. It has such an impact on schools, not just small schools like Northern Lehigh and Northwestern, but Saquon Barkley plays basketball.
Sure.
Devontae Cross, same thing, play basketball, and they're also integral members of their football team. So even if you don't make it to the state championship, there's still an impact. Even for us this year, we made it to the first round. It still had an impact on our winter sports season. So trying to reduce that overlap, I think is a big goal, and to get reduce the season. I mean, we're playing a lot of football games in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and when people see it's playing so late in the year, and it goes to Christmas, and it interacts with wrestling and basketball. People might say, well, just start the season earlier. But I mean, you only have so many weeks to begin with. So, Joe, I don't think that's possible to go much earlier than you do now.
No, and for people that follow the heat acclimatization rules that come in, what Jason just talked about, I think it's the necessity. They have us starting earlier, and I think this plan allows for the season to end a week earlier. So it makes a lot of sense, and right now the early feedback has been pretty positive.
What needs to happen is now, next part of the process is, okay, get it to strategic planning, and then ultimately get it to the board of directors and seal the votes. But now that's where it becomes difficult, and that's where it's stalled in the past. Yeah. You have to worry about District 7, the Whitfield, and their Super Saturday. If that's sacred out there where they play in Heinz Field. You got to talk about issues down in District 1 and 12, the Philadelphia area, with those kids being down at the shore. Okay, so when can you start games? 2 scrimmages versus narrowing back down to 1. All sorts of things are out there. And of course, in our area, we want to maintain our 10-week regular season.
Sure. And I think one of the things, you mentioned all the people that's on the committee, and Coach Tout, and among them, you have Colonial League, you have EPC, you have coaches, you have athletic directors. Seems like you're really trying to get everyone and trying to communicate and trying to get everyone's perspective before you kind of move forward on this. And Joe, what's it been like working on that committee?
We met this week initially, I had a background to the plan as well a little bit earlier. And really what sold me is when you look at the breakdown, compare Pennsylvania to other states. I think one of the main arguments you hear from people, it's going to water down football, and we don't think it is. And when you compare us to other states and their classes, 6 classes will not water down football. I'm convinced of it. But the other side to it, what Jason really did a nice job of with our committee, is it's not about Northern Lehigh. It's about Pennsylvania football. And I use the example for myself. Look at Whitehall. I mean, Whitehall in 4A, I mean, that is a school that's a powerhouse. They're stuck because they're that fringe team that right now is not a 3A, they're a 4A, and they're playing schools that are 3 times their size. And this plan, I think, it's not perfect, but at least it's better than what we currently have.
And I think currently Nazareth is the only team that's smaller than Whitehall. Whitehall and Nazareth are kind of at the lower end of 4A, competing against those bigger schools. I think one of the things that will get universal appeal is shortening the season, because I think football coaches would agree that the season's too long currently. I know basketball and wrestling coaches would agree that it's too long. It's very tough. As you said, if you're playing in the state playoffs, you probably won't get a key basketball player or a key wrestler in shape and condition until you get to January too. If this falls through, is that still going to be an issue, or are you going to still try to figure out a way to shorten it to 15 weeks, even if you don't expand to 6 classifications? Yes,
that's the absolute goal of the football steering committee. Okay, now when those are football guys. Those are guys like myself who are seeking input from their coaches at the local level. They live, eat, and breathe football. When it gets to the next level is then the PIAA Board of Directors, okay? And that's, I mean, I think there's, what, Joe, 25 members of that or
25.
something like that? From superintendents to parents, reps to officials, right? A whole gamut of folks on there. So, and again, each with their own piece of the pie that they want to protect. So I think what the football steering committee at the state level really wants to do is have something solid and something unanimous that we can take to the board of directors and say, or in the strategic planning committee and say, hey, this is solid, it's supported, you know, please support this and make a change.
I got a couple emails, but I want to get one question here too. So I know you have a meeting coming up later this month. So what's kind of the near-term schedule? You have the meeting coming up at the end of March, and then take us through the next couple months and what to expect.
Sure. Well, they met with the Football Coaches Association Penn State a few weeks ago. The athletic directors, Posada, is meeting next week. They're going to present it there, get some feedback from that group. The Football Steering Committee on March 25th is meeting again the same day the Strategic Planning Committee is meeting. Those recommendations will then be taken to the Board of Directors. Could we see a change for next cycle?
Which would be 2016?
That is correct. The answer is yes. Do I personally believe it? I don't think so. I think we want to put out a good product. If we move, is it possible? Yes. Realistic? I'm not sure. I'd rather see us take time, keep it on the table, and come out with a good product before voting something down.
Yeah, and because we talked about all these different factors, you don't want to rush something through, and then
Correct.
you get to next year, and then there's problems and scheduling issues. And
Correct.
Joe, do you kind of feel the same way that right now it probably is not in place for 2016?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. That it's right now it's there's a lot to this plan, and there's a lot of wiggle room. So I think realistically, if it's going to go through, I don't think it would start the next cycle.
Yep.
And Joe's old school guy. He brings up concerns. Is that something that you can see? The coaches have been around that like things a certain way. Do you think they were kind of open to change, and it might be a possibility to convince them to have this happen?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it really is. It
Question.
really, yeah.
First of all, there aren't that many old ones around anymore.
But it made it past your meeting though. Only two.
Yeah, and that was
negative?
unofficial. I mean, that was just
Just
a more or less, to
go
get
over
a
it.
feeling on it. Like I said, I think it kind of goes back to the argument, which is, hey, let's try to get more of our kids more games.